Hey guys, I'm Jamie and Rob is also here with us. We are Rugby Renegade, and today we're going to talk about the five pillars of strength and conditioning for rugby. We're going to kind of cover it's kind of a broad overview of training for strength and conditioning. We're not going to do a deep dive into each individual topic. We'll kind of give you a kind of a run through of what you need to cover off. Okay, so it's often things we see with young rugby players, they're kind of focusing on one or two of them, but maybe not everything. So we'll just get everything you need to tick off in your training, and then if you want to find out more, check out our other articles and videos for a deep dive in each individual bit. That sound about right, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we know, rugby players have to have a huge range and a huge bandwidth of physical capabilities. So these five pillars are really introductory in terms of this video. And as we've discussed many times, Jamie, sometimes the real complexity is how to piece them into your training week in a structured way, a periodized way through the season, because the amount of each that you maybe have opportunity to do is going to change as the season progresses. And having a plan in place, a well-structured plan, is also going to be really crucial. So if you're watching this video and you want a bit of guidance and you want to sort of look at how these might work, you might not get that today, but we will address it in other videos. So make sure that you take a look at them.
Yeah, definitely. What we always say is kind of these always want to be present. And like Rob said, maybe you're not focusing on one of them massively, but it's always there in the background, and then you can ramp it up as and when it suits, where you are in the season, where you are with your training and stuff like that. So let's get stuck into it. The first pillar is to lift heavy, lift heavy, I should say. So yeah, some form of heavy lifting should be in everyone's training program. So that's your squats, deadlifts, bench press, and kind of doing it heavy load. So 75, 8% of one rep max, definitely. And why is that important, Rob?
Well, you've got to overload the musculoskeletal system to get the adaptations that we want to elicit from strength training. And historically, particularly if you're maybe coming from the point of view where you have less experience in the gym, you can underestimate the loads that you need to use. So lifting heavy, by definition, it's hard work. You get to the end of the set, and that could be a 3 rep lift, a 5 rep lift, a 10 rep lift. You should be struggling with that last rep or last couple of reps if you're wanting to overload and you've got your load prescription right. So lifting heavy, pillar number one, but always ensure one that you're lifting safely. Lifting with a gym partner is going to be vitally important if you're lifting heavy and you're really trying to elicit that adaptation to lifting, but getting the load prescription right as well. And yeah, certainly in our experience, people can underestimate the loads used. We typically would only use something maximally like a 3 RM, wouldn't we, Jamie? I mean, we don't do a whole lot of single
Yeah.
rep. I think you get more from it as an athlete. And again, it minimizes that 1 rep hero approach where you might just take on a little bit too much too soon. So lifting heavy, get it into your program, lift safely, and get the load prescription right. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of like one rep max and stuff like that, we try and kind of see how people's strength is progressing through the workout. So hopefully we're seeing that increase, and you can kind of guess from that their one rep max is going to be increasing. Obviously, position wise is going to be a different demand for kind of maximal strength. Obviously, your front rows are going to need it a lot more, but they're also getting that from their training if they're scrummaging regularly. So it needs to be in your training, but as Rob said, you've got to move well first with good technique, and then have good loading parameters. So cool, but probably one that most of the viewers are going to be getting covered off. Whereas the second pillar is often one we kind of see people lack. That everyone wants to get stronger and bigger, but they don't all do the next pillar, which is to lift explosively. So that's your Olympic lifts, that's jumping, throwing, and all the different variations of that. And obviously, the importance is that getting stronger helps us improve how much force we can produce, but we also need to produce that fast to be able to beat the opposition. Obviously, speed kills on the rugby pitch. What are your takes on lifting explosively, Rob?
Yeah, lifting explosively, moving explosively. That's what rugby players need to express. Having a good foundation of strength and moving well, vitally important. But in terms of transfer onto the field, you're looking at producing really high force in fractions of a second. And something that you might read or see in some of our other resources is rate of force development, and being able to access your strength in a short period of time is really where you're going to get maximal benefit in terms of your performance. It's a little bit more detailed, maybe, and I'd encourage anyone to look at our force velocity educational videos, force velocity curve, but rate of force development. So for me as a physio, that end stage rehab or getting back onto the field, RFD, and being able to move and respond quickly and produce force quickly is just absolutely crucial. And the loads that you use are going to go down. You know, if you're wrestling with a really heavy load, you're not going to be able to move it that quickly. So when you're looking at rate of force development, when you're looking at power, the external loads that you use are going to be far, far less, but it's about speed. It's about being explosive. And as I said, you know, that is gold dust for rugby players.
Yeah, definitely. You're sort of leading into the sort of velocity-based training. We've got a few articles and kind of podcasts with experts in that as well. It's to give an example to the viewers. It's kind of if you're the same strength level as your opposition, but he has a better rate of force development, he's going to beat you because he's going to produce that force faster and ultimately win the collision or whatever it might be. So yeah, massively important. And again, like I said, it's something not everyone kind of gets wrong, but maybe they don't focus enough on that. Once you've built that heavy strength base, then focus on more explosive lifting, definitely. So that brings us to pillar three. And it's also kind of segues nice from lifting explosively because in terms of that training, you want to see good recovery so you can keep that velocity up. And of course, pillar three is sprinting. If you want to run fast, you've got to run fast and be nice and recovered for that. It's really dependent on your central nervous system, which takes a little bit longer to recover than everything else. So that's my first point on that is make sure you have good recoveries, and then that keeps your speed up. There's no point getting fatigued and your speed dropping because then obviously you're not training what you're trying to train. You say that's about right, Rob?
Yeah, sprinting. I mean, one key thing about having regular speed exposure into your training is injury prevention. It actually reduces your susceptibility to soft tissue injuries by exposing your body to a sprinting stimulus. Now, we would advise a couple of exposures a week is going to really help protect your hamstrings, your quads, your calves. But getting the timing right of those exposures is absolutely crucial. So you need to be fresh enough to sprint at your best and actually reach, typically we would say 90% of your maximal speed when you to class as a maximal exposure. 95% plus, absolutely ideal. But if you're breaking 90% a couple of times a week, that's going to really help maintain that level of protection for your soft tissue. But do it when your legs are relatively fresh, so not too close to the game that you've competed in previously. And similarly, not too close to the game ahead. So you need to be sufficiently recovered to do it. And you need to be sufficiently far enough away from your next game so you're not carrying over any sort of residual fatigue. But yeah, from a protective mechanism, and like what you said there, Jamie, to run fast, you've got to run fast. To actually develop the skill set that is sprinting, it's very demanding from a neuromuscular coordination point of view. It's very demanding from a load management point of view. The ground reaction forces that you're having to deal with when you're sprinting, you need to train your body to deal with those. So being fearful of speed is a real it's a real negative in terms of your training. If you're too scared to sprint, when that breakaway comes on the Saturday, that's when you are at high risk of something detrimental happening. So work it into your program, make it a regular feature and time it appropriately, but it absolutely has to be there.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that kind of fear of tapping into that top speed. And I know I've had conversations with players, often front rows, kind of going, well, in a match, I don't actually sprint or hit top speed, and it's like, well, kind of two things. Yeah, maybe that highlights that they need to do specific speed preps, so shorter distances in their training, but also if they're exposed to it, it means if it ever does happen in a game, which chances are it will every now and then, they're prepared to do it and perform well and prevent that injury. But it's just kind of increasing their ceiling, which just shifts up everything else in terms of their capacity, their ability to repeat those high speed sprints, even at shorter durations. So definitely worth getting in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just add, you look at the modern day front rowers, they are sprinters. They move incredibly well. They
Yeah.
are very explosive, but they are fast over the ground as well. So for you guys watching that aren't at that level, what James said about moving your ceiling up in terms of what you're capable of doing on the field and what you can offer your team, sprint training could be a great place to focus in on.
Yeah, definitely. So that brings us to pillar number four, and that's conditioning. So some form of energy system development training. And this is probably one you touched on at the start of how we need to sort of adjust it and organize it around, periodized plan of the year and kind of what other things you're doing. And that's because obviously in season, our biggest conditioning session is the Saturday. It's the game on the weekend, and we need to make sure people are recovered from that, and then a taper off into to peak for that at the end of the week. So that needs to be managed. But in terms of conditioning, there's all different ways we can do it. Obviously, part of your rugby training is that. I mentioned the game is a conditioning stimulus, and we'll use how much game time you get to dictate how much extra or less conditioning you do. But then also, we can just do running, alongside training or as an addition to training. We can do off-feet conditioning, swimming, things like that, all the different variety of things. And it's kind of how we use those to assist and coincide with the rugby training. And it's a bit of a difficult one to kind of talk about because it kind of depends on what your team's rugby training is like, what the rugby philosophy is of the coach you're playing for. They might want to play high running rugby, 15-man rugby. Others might want to, have a big pack and just, play 9-man rugby. So it's kind of, it's that adjusting it as you said right at the start, Rob. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, in terms of the frequency of your training and the intensity of your training, I feel that the conditioning pillar, it's almost about recognizing what you don't have regularly. So if your team training is quite slow paced, very set piece orientated, very technical, tactical, you're not actually moving around the field that much, you're probably going to find that you're not spiking your heart rate all that much. And you may be missing a bit of intensity. And so the conditioning that we'd probably advise an athlete in this example to do is maybe some top up work that's going to be, shorter intervals, a bit of anaerobic work to kind of fill that gap. So you're still getting the adaptations from intense bouts of anaerobic training. If you're the other side of that coin and your training is all out maximal efforts in short blocks, contact clear outs, contact drills, fast excel retreats, kick chase drills. You're probably going to be doing quite a bit of anaerobic work as part of that. And you might be better suited to doing some lower zone two based training. That's a real big thing on the socials at the moment. Everyone's talking about it, but it really does depend on what you're getting exposed to regularly and what you aren't. Rugby needs both. You need a really good aerobic base, and you might get that from training, or you might need to supplement it a little bit. You also need the ability to work anaerobically for quite prolonged periods of time with relatively short recovery blocks, those real high intensity spikes that you get in a game. So if that's lacking in your training, our advice would be to find a way, maybe through off-feet con top ups or bolt-ons at the end of training sessions, to allow yourself to have that regular exposure to these two types of energy systems. And that really will change club to club, athlete to athlete, but you certainly need to expose yourself to both.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of like this whole video of these are the five pillars that you need in your training, but just adjust based on, your team and your position and kind of current training conditions. And the other thing I say in terms of conditioning is those first three pillars to be able to produce force, produce it fast, and produce maximum velocity. We want to condition so we can do that, in that initial effort and be able to repeat it for high intensity efforts. But then also that, like I said, that aerobic system, that zone two work to help us recover between bouts so we can continue doing it for the whole 80 minutes. And that's the way you want to kind of think about your training. Okay. So the final pillar and kind of a cheat, it's not really strength and condition, it's actually skills training. So training to develop your skills. And again, it's all those previous four pillars. They're all allowing us to be able to perform those rugby skills quicker and better than the opposition, so we can kind of dominate them, whether it's in contact or avoiding contact, for example, or just your handling, your hand-eye coordination. If you've got a good engine, you're recovering better, you'll be more focused and be able to perform those skills better. And often I don't see, or two things I see, I guess, people not working on their skills. So we've all got that player in our team who's like real good in the gym, terrible out on the pitch. And obviously that's not the goal. All our training on those four first pillars is to, improve our capacity to be better out on the pitch with those skills. So yeah, that would be the other example is someone who does too much gym stuff and it actually affects their rugby training, their skill, technical, tactical training. We want it to be there to assist it. You should never be so fatigued from training in the gym that your skills and rugby training sort of standards drop. You sound about right on that, Rob? You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Our driver here in terms of what we do as coaches is to improve on-field performance. I think when you start talking about skills, you're thinking about decision making as well and making appropriate
Yeah.
decisions at appropriate time on the field and exposing yourself to game relevant situations on the field is going to help massively. Decisions under fatigue, decisions under pressure is going to be a big part. Close skills like goal kicking, you can practice, you can recreate a bit of pressure, but you need bodies in motion when it comes to the hand-eye and kind of open gameplay scenarios that you're going to be faced with. I think occasionally with this, when we talk about skills, people can go, well, I'm going to hybrid my training. I'm going to do skills-based focused work in the gym to help my skill development. I feel personally that's a big mistake. Skill development, rugby skill development should happen on the field. When you're in the gym, keep the focus on the pillars that we've been talking about. If you need to lift heavy, lift heavy. If you're going for explosive movements, focus on technique and development in that area and keep the skill acquisition part with your coach, with your teammates on the field. I see it periodically. You might see it more often on socials, people doing um, some interesting creations in the gym that kind of look like rugby, but aren't quite. Look, skill acquisition is about playing rugby and developing rugby specific skills. So when you're training them, make it as specific as you can. Gym-based training, explosive movements, sprinting, let's use these five pillars, let's integrate them, but skills particularly with your teammates on the field and make it game relevant.
Yeah, I've had this discussion, let's say, with plenty of rugby coaches trying to kind of it's well intended. They're trying to bridge that gap between the gym and the pitch and get that transfer training. But what you need to go is like everything I'm doing, is it increasing my force production and is it improving the skill, or is it the best way to do that? And often some of those drills I think that you were alluding to, they're either less force and less velocity that you do with another, well, a proper kind of strength or power lift. And they're not quite the sport skill. So you're like, it's not improving either of them. So that's where I kind of fall on that kind of that side of it.
Yeah, I'd agree. Training efficiency, is it the best way to get the most benefit in the area that you want? And I think some of those hybrid crossovers maybe don't suit the need as well as they maybe suggest that they do.
Yeah. Definitely. Awesome, Rob. So that is the five pillars of strength and conditioning for rugby players. So one, lift heavy, two, lift explosively, three, sprint, four, improve your energy systems condition, and five, work on your skills. Okay, so that's it. In the meantime, guys, if you found that helpful or have any questions, just pop some questions down in the comments below, and please give us a like and a subscribe.
Thanks for watching, guys. Hi guys, thanks very much for watching. As some of you may know, or some of you that are new to the channel might not know, Rugby Renegade has been put together to create training resources, products and information for rugby players. We've helped rugby players all over the world optimize their training and improve their performance on the field. So please do subscribe to the channel, like the video if you found the content useful, and check out some of our other platforms.
Yes, guys, the main place to get hold of us is at rugbyrenegade.com, where we've got articles, podcasts covering workouts, training theory, nutrition, and anything else that will help you be a good rugby player and improve your performance. And yeah, check out all the different social media channels to kind of get links back to that. And of course, if you have any questions on how to improve your training, how to improve your performance, that's what we're here for. We want to answer those questions. So hit us up in the comments below or DM us on social media and we'll produce a video to help you improve your performance.